The Arrogant History of White Ben by Clemence Dane. Chapter 6, The Policewoman. Ben, meanwhile, found his way down the passage and out at the front door, oblivious of the emotional dissolution he left behind him. His farewell smile had been without significance. He had merely obeyed an instinct. Young Petal was certainly a property and must be retrieved later. But at the moment, Ben was for a look at the wide world. Between the doorsteps and the threshold, lilies of the valley thrust up leaves and red-berried stalks. Ben stepped carefully over them and out along the path between the rosebuds, down the steep lower steps, and so on to the King's Highway. He observed with relief that the moon had been skillfully mended. She shone down once more upon the mysteries of midnight, and so brightly that Ben put his hand in his pocket for the letters. He knew by listening to the little girl that it was a feat to read by moonlight. Her voice rang in his memory. "Look, Mother! World weary for peace. 5 governments meet in Washington. Look, Mother! Mother, do look! I can actually make out the print." Well, Ben would be cleverer than his maker. He would make out the handwriting. "My dear Nell, dearest Nell, Nell, my sweet Nell, darling." Ben turned to the back of letter after letter, looking for names he knew, and found some: Bus, Jenny, Rupert. But most of the signatures defeated him. Handwritings were harder to read than the notice boards. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He stuffed them away again, bored, and walked on fairly steadily, for he had drunk less whiskey than young Pendle. Nonetheless, it had modified his violent determination to discover and destroy the sleeping places of the crows. Better to rest first. If he could find the much-talked-of village, there would perhaps be a garden in which he could stand and sleep. The fields were quiet about the crossroads, and though the 4 lanes were lipped by dark, soft patches which might have been homesteads, no lights twinkled. The signpost embarrassed him much as a monkey embarrasses a self-conscious human being. Without studying its directions, he shied past it to plunge into the shadow of the high-flung briar hedge, into its odor of clean dust and blackberry flowers, and without warning, into the arms of a woman. He could not see her, but he felt her warm hands fending him off, as she said loudly and cheerfully, "Now then, my lad, where do you think you're going?" and passed on her way with the serenity of a woman elderly, stout, and accustomed to command. Now all Ben's memories told him to like and trust women. His instinct, on the other hand, told him that he would not be much loved by them in return. He was not handsome enough for such raptures as his maker. As his maker, for instance, had bestowed upon the morning glories. But he was sure, memory and instinct agreed in this, that he would get from all feminine creatures the sort of care which old George had given impartially to his fences, his gravel, and the parsley bed. His affairs and his linen would always receive attention. So he rushed after the elderly woman, crying forlornly, "I do not know." "What's this?" she said sharply, and shortened her stride. "You asked a question," said Ben. "I answered it. I do not know," said Ben, "where I am going, and I wish you to tell me." Do you know your own name?" He was amused. "Of course, I am Ben," said White Ben, and added hastily, "and I think Campion, Ben Campion." "You're sure?" "I mean, be sure," she said. "It is my name," said Ben with dignity. "It was given to me. So now will you tell me?" And he looked trustfully into her humorous eyes. "Well," said the elderly woman, "I'm supposed to know everything, but—" "Why?" interrupted Ben in a hurry, for here, he thought, was a possible successor to young Petal. "Because I'm a temporary policewoman." Police! The word threaded his dubious dark blue way through all the Petal narratives. Keep clear of the police was a maxim which Ben would never forget. He showed his dismay so plainly that the policewoman began to chaff him. "What have you got on your conscience?" she demanded, as she looked at him keenly, and her manner softened. "What's your trouble? Out with it. I'm off duty, or I shall be in 6 minutes." He drew a breath of relief. His instinct had not failed him. Women are to be trusted, especially when they are old and weather-beaten. She looks, thought Ben, as if she used to stand out in the open hour after hour, just as I did. only perhaps not in a field like mine, but in that fine park on the other hillside. Then, emboldened by her easy way, he spoke, his admiring thought aloud. You should be in a fine park.
That's very kind of you, but let's stick to your problems. Where do you want to go? Because I can tell you the mileage from here to Edinburgh, or what they'll overcharge you at the Temperance Hotel, or which day the bothering place is open to the public, or what'll happen to you if you pick other people's bluebells when I'm on duty, or where to hand in any live bomb their big brother brought home for the children. But some things are beyond even me, Mr. I can't tell you, for instance, when the war's going to end.
I can tell you that, interrupted Ben.
You can?
She turned to look at him, startled out of her elderly jocularity. Then the eager spark was quenched, and she continued in her chosen manner.
You do know, don't you, that there's a war on?
It has ceased, said Ben simply. An agreement will be signed tomorrow. Today. Is it past midnight? Then today.
Rumours.
She dismissed them with a sigh. No, truth. Old Bus told us.
Lord Bothering?
She was startled.
When did he say so? Which paper?
This afternoon, with his own mouth. I heard him.
You were up at that poor woman's today, were you? Were you there when it happened? I was off duty and asleep. It never occurred to my alleged factotum to wake me, fool. But that's besides the point. You tell me Bothering definitely said an armistice.
Secession was the word.
Armistice or secession, it's the same thing. Oh, my God, it means peace.
And she put her hand to her throat with a gesture which, old and stout as she was, recalled to him the other woman's slender grace. She quavered, fumbling her words.
They'll be home again, the men.
Not, said Ben as a phrase rose to his memory. Not the men on the wire.
Be quiet.
But it is true. Old George had a brother caught. They are left to the crows.
Must you talk like this? Haven't we had enough hysteria? I've got nephews, godsons, sons of so many friends.
Well, some will come home, and so will George's grandson and Ray's brother. Then you will need not stand any longer like a... He gulped. Like a signpost telling people everything.
Oh, as to that...
She fought for self-control.
I haven't minded the job. I was in the WPS in the 1914 war. Oh, well, that's 40 years ago. I tried to get out this time, but my figure gives me away.
You that are young. Then, with a quick laugh, she mastered her voice, keying it down, slowing it to casualness.
But I said to myself, at least I can police the village. But look here. She was now completely her competent self. In confidence, what else did Bothering say?
There was no time. We were all in the garden, and he had begun to talk, when suddenly those black devils, they dropped their filth.
Now quiet.
She caught his arm above the elbow, and part of her mind lamented its fleshlessness.
My good child, we've done the same to them.
Why not? He jerked his arm away. We have the right to drive them off our fields. Look what they did and flew away. The gardener killed. She killed. My place wrecked.
Your place?
Why, yes, my place, my field that I have watched over so carefully. My garden where I have never let one crow settle, my own place.
Oh, now I understand.
She gave an impatient cluck at her slowness.
You're the landlord. I've had to pull her off. The drains, yes. Most primitive. So she wrote to you, and you've just come down. What a horrible shock for you. Hideous business. Poor woman. Yes, there's always an unnecessary last victim.
Then she began to charge herself with his welfare.
So, you want to get back to London, of course. I'm afraid you've missed the midnight train. What can you do? You can't get a car, of course. No petrol. You could walk to Orpington and get a workman's train.
He shook his head. London comes later, said Ben. The words rang out like a reveille. She turned quickly to look at him, and was startled to find that his bearing and manner had changed. He was staring in front of him as if he had dismissed their conversation from his thoughts, and were no longer aware that he walked beside her. It was as if his appeal, his helplessness, his silly charm had been an illusion, evanescent as the mists which, as earth cooled, were rising everywhere in the fields. She had seen him through such a mist. Now she had penetrated it. Now she was close to him, and found him, not a sweet fool, but a hard and dangerous one. His very footstep had changed its note. Clank, stamp. She had not noticed before that he limped. It was natural that, as he began to forget her, she should regard him with something more than her usual professional interest in life and its types. She was a direct woman, and was quite ready to say to him, "I like you. How can I serve you?" But she had also to protect her dignity by the manner of her offer. She must always be able to retort upon brutal youth with, "Can't an old woman have a joke?" she began, half laughing. "Mr. Campion, I'm the village policewoman. Well, there's a war on, but in peace times I have other duties, a house in town, you know, and work in town, committees and such, political, some of them. I have what the fools call influence. Sometimes I use it. Well, Mr. Campion, I have met socially, and in my work, most of the dark horses of my time. I have an eye for them," and she looked at him with pleasant challenge, and her eyes sparkled, but there was no responsive gleam. So he was not taking a hint. Yet she could not be mistaken in his quality. He tramped along beside her, in a mood which she recognized, the mood of the dark horse before he rears or bolts or wins the Derby. She knew the signs. "Mr. Campion." Clank, stamp. Clank, stump. "Mr. Campion, when you were wounded—" "I was not. One leg is shorter than the other." "Oh, I beg your pardon." "Why, is it better than only one leg?" "That," she was pleased with him, "is the sensible way to look at it." "What other way can there be? I am glad to have two legs." Yes, I believe you." He made her laugh, though she was touched by his simplicity. She pulled her powers out of the past to help her deal with such simplicity. "Don't be so earnest. I want you to listen to me, Mr. Campion. No, don't go off into a dream, and remember, I'm not being impertinent. When you get to London later, what are you going to do for us, to us?" "I have not planned it yet. I am planning. One thing is sure. It is a bad world, and it must be changed." "You are going to change it, Mr. Campion?" "Yes, why not? The creatures who spoil it can be scared away. I shall need help, that is true. Will you help me?" "I should like to help you. I will help you in any way I can." On that, giving her no thanks, he gave her his orders, as he had given them to young Peddle. "Then tell me everything I have to know." "Everything? It's a tall order." "You have lived a long time." "Oh, yes. Dear me, I was up at Newham in 1910. I took honours in history, I did this." She touched her badge. "Through the war in 1914, I mean, and let me see. I've lectured all over America. I've been married twice, I've written innumerable articles, and I've stood for Parliament. I didn't get in. Now I'm 65 and on the shelf. I suppose, but I should like to jump down again. I suppose I could tell you a good many things, yes?" "Everything." "The answer to everything in so many words." She sighed and laughed. "Well, I'll try. But in what shape do you want your knowledge?" "We are such stuff as dreams are made on, that's one shape. Oh God, Montreal, that's another. Room to deny ourselves, or I think, therefore I am. We come from God, who is our home. The answer's a lemon. Well, there are a few shapes for you." "More," said Ben. "What?" "Say more sayings of people." "More? It's never to be born next, best to die soon. Oh, let me think. It'll all come out in the wash." "More." "Life in itself holds nothing good for us." "More." "God's in his heaven, all's right with the world." "That is a lie, that answer." "No, just an old-fashioned shape." "There is only one shape. Everything is in it. Get rid of the crows."